If you kind of frame it in a lot of care and love, like brotherly love, hopefully, inshallah, to handle it. And it takes time. Everyone takes time. We all have that, inshallah. Is there any other questions from the sister side? Yeah, anything from the sister side? Okay, go ahead. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
Through every lecture we hear in Ramadan, I always get these mixed signals depending on what's the first step that you're supposed to readjust your personality, like fix yourself in Ramadan, because it's like to stop your habits. But what's the first step? Like, what are you supposed to recognize first? Is it your internal problems, like internal like habits, for example, like your relationship between your parents, or is it just your outward Muslimitary? Like, whenever they're saying something, you're supposed to fix one thing to the next, but how come it's like everything is all mixed up? Like, where do you start? Where do you start in fixing yourself?
That's a very good question, mashallah. So, a lot of times we think of internal as external as being two different things, but let me give you an example. In your car, you guys know what a car is, right? Okay, just checking. All right. How do you know how much gas is in your gas tank? Huh? Checking the what? How much gas you have, but how do you know? What shows you? The meter, the gauge, right? Are you actually looking inside of your gas tank and measuring it with like cups? Are you like 1, 2? No, right? You're looking at a thing. So our actions serve as the meter for our heart. The way that we tell if our heart is healthy is our actions. It's very simple, right? It seems complicated, but it's actually simple. So instead of thinking, okay, what do I work on first, my heart or my actions, realize that your actions impact your heart, and your heart impacts your actions. So it's actually a win-win. Whatever you work on, you're gonna get better, right? So if a person says to themselves, okay, I just finished Isha, the Imam's going to get up and pray Taraweeh. My heart does not want to pray Taraweeh. Okay? Really doesn't want to pray Taraweeh. Then, if you get up and start praying Taraweeh, that action is going to be purifying your heart. In the same way that when you have soap on your hand, how do you make the bubbles? How do you make the suds come? No, you don't blow the bubbles. You have soap on your hand. This guy's in the bathroom, man. I'm going to bump into you. You're going to be like just blowing bubbles in the bathroom. Now, how do you make it? No, besides water, what else? Yeah, you have to agitate it, right? You gotta bother it. So when you feel agitation in your heart, like when you feel like, man, like your parents are like yelling at you and you're like, man, I know Islamically I shouldn't talk back. When you feel that agitation, that's good. That's a good thing. Agitation is a good thing. Your heart should feel bothered a little bit. That means that it's working out, right? So the sister's question is very good. She said, what do we focus on, internal or external? The reality is, no matter what you're focusing on, both will be affected, inshallah. So if you start to worry about the external by praying more, by fasting more, by reading more Quran, realize that those are all internal as well. But if you sit for a while after Isha and you think to yourself, man, what sicknesses do I have in my heart? Oh, I have envy, I have jealousy. These are internal sicknesses, they're not external. But you'll start to realize that you can think about it, you can reflect, make dua, and Allah will cure them. So work on either one, inshallah, and you'll find that both will be helped, inshallah. Yes? Bismillah. Yeah.
Islam as a religion, as you all know, came to actually define the relationship between first us as slaves and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and between us as people. So with that, I think that we should really go back to the Quran and understand our religion as adults, so this way we can be patient and know how to deal with the youth, and also the youth, we should teach them how to precede the adults with a way of respect.
Yes.
And I believe by defining that relationship and understanding the relationship between the adults and the youth, that would make it less judgmental, but also would make it as the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam described us as a society that are a very communal Muslim, which means that we are very, very well structured.
Yeah.
And that's how we do it.
Yeah, exactly. That's actually a beautiful, kalbunyan is actually a beautiful phrase, mashallah, because it shows that there's like firmness, right? There's strength. Jazakallah khair, our elder brother, mashallah, he's saying that if we turn back to the Quran and we learn about the Quran and the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we'll get guidance on how to have good relationship with our kids and our parents. So we can't just pull it out of nowhere, right? There's a guide here, right? And that's very, very important. And I think one of the other places where we get relationship advice from is our culture. And we have to understand that culture is good, it's nice, right? But it doesn't always equal Islam. Sometimes it kind of goes against it sometimes. So we have to, whenever we have anything in our culture, that's good, but we have to measure it against the Quran and see, okay, what does Allah say? What is culture? Okay, if it's good, then it's good. Jazakumullah khair. Barakallah. Inshallah. We have a few more questions, inshallah. Okay. 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 So the first question we have here, inshallah, is do you have advice for how to stop talking to the other gender? So for girls, stop talking to guys stop talking to girls. Just stop. No. No. To be honest with you, okay, so there's a couple of things that you can practically do. Number one is you could sort of ask yourself, like, why am I doing it in the first place? It's actually quite normal for guys to want to talk to girls and girls to want to talk to guys. This is actually normal. This is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. And there's certain parameters by which this is accepted, usually marriage, right, things like that. So up until that point, what do? Up until that point, how do you manage yourself? And how do you control yourself from crossing the lines that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet have set down? A few things is, number one, I can't stress enough good suhbah. Be around good people. Spend your time doing good things. Oftentimes we yell at people for doing bad things, but we don't give them good alternatives. So we need to give people alternatives to making bad decisions, as opposed to just telling them don't do that. So instead of saying don't do that, we should say do this instead, okay? So find good alternatives, hang out with good people, do things, join a basketball league, right? Go out hiking, go out and explore the city, go out and do all kinds of things. Keep yourself busy. The second thing is, ask yourself, when are you most inclined to talking to the opposite gender? Is it late at night on Facebook, right? Is it late at night in general, right? So when you do, you have to catch yourself. These things in psychology, they call them triggers. Catch your triggers, right? So perhaps your trigger is that you're laying in bed and you got your cell phone and now you're like, oh, I want to text this girl or this guy and see what's going on, or I want to Snapchat this person or whatnot. So when you find your trigger, it might be that it's late at night, it might be that, you're home alone, etc. Then be aware of that trigger and fight the trigger when it happens, right? So set that in place. And the third thing is realize something about relationships in general, is that I don't believe that in the way that America in its culture defines friendship between the guy and a girl, I don't believe that they can just stay friends. So you might say okay, we can, but the reality is that guys always want to be more than friends. Okay, let me just put that out there for you. Okay, so in the way that we define friendship now, right? But if you say oh, I have a friend, there's obviously a loaded term behind that. So understand that usually the relationship is going to go further, and one of you is going to get hurt. Okay, one of you will get hurt, so it's better not to engage in that kind of deep relationships, those friendships. Okay, Wallahu a'lam. How do I quit watching? Can I just say it or no? How do I quit watching haram things on television or on the computer? Very, very important. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ gave a couple things. Number one is be active. Number two is fast, because fasting has a way of starving the body, right, and sort of increasing us in taqwa, whether or not we are realizing it. The third thing is that you have to really set limits for yourself and ask yourself, what is making you, what is influencing you, what is pushing you to do these things? A lot of times it's just not being busy. A lot of times it's just not having anything to do. A lot of times it's not being it's not exercising, it's not being healthy, right? These sort of behaviors have a way of sort of influencing us to go and engage in this kind of behavior, like looking at haram things, either on television, like pornography, or on computers, things like that. So make sure that you are surrounding yourself with the opportunities to succeed. If you find that you are consistent in your habit, perhaps you have an addiction, then there are a couple of things you can do. Number one is you want to remove the situation from where it is. So if you have your laptop or your computer in your room, then do whatever you have to do to remove that situation. So if it means taking your computer out of your room, putting it in a public space, I agree with that. If it means taking your door off of the hinges, I agree. If your parents ask you why, just say you don't like doors, okay? If it means, turning off your cell phone data at night, do that, right? Whatever you have to do. If you really, really want to get rid of this sickness, then you will do things that are not normal to stop it, right? Because it's not a normal sickness to have, meaning that you have to get rid of it. I firmly believe just spend as much time in a public space as possible and don't spend a lot of time alone. Don't spend a lot of time alone. And also, you have to make dua and you have to really ask Allah to help you cure yourself. And if it's at a point where you think it's serious addiction, then it's very important to see a mental health counselor, inshallah, to work on it. Inshallah. Maybe one more. Okay. I feel like my son is resentful towards me. Can you say a good thing about moms who are dedicated to guide them on the straight path? I think that there's nothing I can say that trumps the teaching of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's one of the most beautiful stories of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that his mother passed away when he was how old? How old? 6, right? Mother passed away when he was 6. Okay, so the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't have a lot of time to spend with his mother, right? She died when he was very young. But there was a time where he was on his way back. He was traveling,